The album with us at the moment, that's what he was doing. He was. I was saying that I went to Bachelor of the Year party.
Pull your shirt back just to make it look better. Yes, if you put it down and sit back on it, yeah.
And I said actually it was just full of women, and it's actually the sort of thing the man should go to, because it was just kind of like 20 women to every man. He's like, oh, why don't I know? Why didn't I know?
Bless him. Right, you okay?
Yes. So thanks very much for speaking to us, Max.
That's okay.
First of all, you just explain, I know it may sound irrelevant, but who you are and the experience that you have in this industry, and really what you do.
Max Clifford, public relations consultant. I started out in PR as a press officer at EMI in 1962, when I helped to launch an unknown band called the Beatles that did quite well. We then launched Motown with Diana Ross and Stevie Wonder and the Jackson 5 and various others. Helped to launch Cliff Richard and Adam Faith. Then subsequently went out on my own and worked with people like Muhammad Ali and Frank Sinatra and Marlon Brando and various people like that. And in the 4 years since I started Max Clifford Associates, we these days tend to do a wide range of clients, from financial, health, beauty, sport, entertainment, property companies, a wide range. And I suppose it's a small company, but we have got clients all over the world, and spend as much time working with the American, European media as we do the British media.
So I'm talking to the right man to talk about the Beckhams and about.
I don't think they'd think so.
Maybe not. But let's take a step back and just look at when they became a couple, and that peculiar equation that is the celebrity equation, that means that sort of 1 and 1 does not make 2. You suddenly, the combined power of a celebrity couple. How did you see that these two people sort of evolve from what was an aspiring footballer and a girl at the top of her career in a pop group?
Well, initially, obviously, Victoria was the star of the two. She was already part of a very successful pop group, and the Spice Girls, and David was making his name as a footballer. So initially, she was the star and he was the support. As the years went by, of course, that changed. Her career came to an end, and David became a bigger and bigger star. In fact, the biggest sports star probably in Britain, and one of the biggest football stars around the world. More than football, he also became a pin-up boy, someone who became very, very popular with sponsors, advertisers, because of his good looks, etc. And they collectively became the golden couple. And after Princess Diana's tragic death, they kind of took that centre stage as the biggest media couple, the biggest media stars, certainly in Britain. And newspapers, magazines, television. So in the last 5 years or so, they've been by a long way the most popular couple with the British media.
So, like many people, I went out and bought my milk and bacon for my Sunday morning and my paper, and there, straight away, News of the World had to buy it. I was quite shocked that the nanny had managed, that story had managed to be printed. Why was it right that story should have gone to press?
Well, when you've got major stories like this, particularly involving a confidentiality agreement which was signed, you have to look at justification. And I think what came across from the judge, who gave the News of the World permission to print the Abby Gibson story, the nanny's story, the Beckhams nanny story, was that, first of all, a lot was already in the public domain. Secondly, that this was very much about them as a family, them as the Beckham band, the Beckham brand even, and that therefore maybe what the Beckhams portrayed as their relationship wasn't quite the reality of the situation. That seemed to be what he was saying. Therefore, in his opinion, this was of public interest, and therefore he gave the News of the World permission to publish the story, and overcame the injunction and said no to the injunction the Beckhams were trying to put on it. So that would seem to have been his thought pattern, that in this particular instance he gave permission. It's quite unusual, and it certainly sent shockwaves throughout the world of stars, because obviously they have confidentiality agreements with their staff, and a lot of stars, including stars I represent, are now very concerned that, do they mean very much? Are they worth the vast sums of money that they paid lawyers to draw these agreements up on their behalf?
The Beckhams seem to be what's deemed now fair game.
Anybody that's in the public eye is fair game. Any star that uses the media can't complain when the media uses them. I mean, they might not like it, but they have the ability to manipulate the media to suit them by employing expensive PR men like me, expensive lawyers. Therefore, I say to every star I've ever worked with or do work with, that if you're going to use the media to help your career, to help your making money, building your name, building your image, then don't complain if they use you. That's the game. Obviously, we try to avoid it. Obviously, I've created images all over the world for the last 40 years, which have got very little to do with reality. But I always try to install in any of my clients just a little bit of reality. And I think that the question with the Beckhams is, of course they only want nice things to be written about them. Anybody does. But what you've got to do, in my view, is to look at what the nanny actually said, and then you, being the public, make up your own minds. Who's telling the truth? I think that every situation has to be looked at its own merits. If you have a star that is, if you like, reclusive, doesn't play the publicity game, doesn't use the media, keeps away, keeps themselves, keeps their private life very private, and many stars do, then I think that it's a slightly different judgment call. If it's a star that really goes out of their way to milk everything they can, commercially and from every other angle, aspect from the media, then again, I think that you've got to be a bit and take that on board when you make your decision.
How guilty is Victoria of using the media? I mean, today we see her in what seem very natural set-up shots, I would imagine, but natural-looking shots, playing with her son.
Well, the Beckham band. No, I can't say it for this morning. The Beckham brand has been damaged by Rebecca Luce, by Danielle Heath, I think her name was, or whatever it is, and obviously by Abby Gibson, particularly by Abby, because as a nanny, her insight into family life is far more revealing, detailed than any of the other articles that have gone in the past. She was very close at the heart of that family. Now they're trying to do everything they can to show themselves again as the golden couple, harmonious. We have the odd row, but so you can understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. The British public, the public in general, will make up their own minds as to who's got it right. But obviously in the last year particularly, there has been some real cracks in that family image, that golden family image that the Beckhams have projected so successfully for the years before.
What do you think that I mean, obviously the implication would be is that it's going to hit them hardest in the pocket, because the deals and Brown Beckham financially it's not going to.
I think that David Beckham will be making vast sums of money for a long time to come. Victoria, well, her career seems to have disappeared over the last few years, musically, television, nothing really has worked. But I don't think that the Beckhams are going to be suffering too much financially. In terms of those sponsors that buy into the brand Beckham, maybe it's a different matter. Maybe they will be thinking, now hold on a minute, are they quite what they appear to be? Who do we believe? Who do the public believe? Because they've got to be very aware. If you're using a particular couple to sell you your product, your brand, and market research has said this couple epitomises everything you want to get across, then suddenly when all these things starting to appear in the papers, and people are questioning, hold on, is this just a facade? I mean, I've seen lots of articles this week in the British press saying the whole thing is a sham, the whole thing is just a showbiz scenario, it's not real. It's been in the Sun, it's been in the Mail, it's been in most papers. So there's some big question marks being asked. So that's the one area where I suppose there is a shadow right now over the brand and the image of the perfect married couple, the golden couple.
Where do you think Victoria went wrong? Because it seems to be that still David can do no wrong, even with these allegations. And
well, I don't actually agree with that. I think for the first time, people are starting to look at him in a far more questioning light. I don't mean football fans. Football fans don't care. They wouldn't care if someone was a mass murderer, I don't think. As long as they're doing well for their side, that's all that matters to most football fans. But to the wider public, maybe the more discerning public, maybe the more intelligent public, there's definitely question marks being asked as to, is David quite the dedicated, devoted family man and father that he's been portrayed? That's a fact. So I don't think Victoria's been popular for some time with the British public. I'm surprised that there wasn't sympathy after. Is it too noisy for you?
yeah, because I say after the Rebecca Lewis thing though, the nanny scenario seems to have, as you say, softened opinion towards her. But after Rebecca Lewis, I know many people who went, oh, well, I would if, I don't...
No, I think that was one of the things. When I broke the Rebecca Lewis story, I genuinely thought there'd be a lot of sympathy for Victoria, but there wasn't any sympathy. They were blaming her almost as much as they blame Rebecca. And the only person that came out of it as totally innocent was David, like he had nothing to do with it, like Rebecca must have thrown herself at him and took advantage and forced him, and it was wonderful. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. But I think that's changed. I think that now there's definite question marks, and I do think that even if they're not unhappy about what he allegedly is and what he allegedly has been doing, they see him in a different light. Women, people in general. There's a big question mark. And I think that Abby Gibson's revelations really have caused a lot of the British public to reevaluate their views of David Beckham.
How much of a case do the Beckhams have to sue her? Because she did sign that confidentiality.
There's no question that she broke a confidentiality agreement. So that's a fact. She did. Now, when it comes to court, she's got to establish justification. Having heard a lot of things that Abby has told me and told the media, told News of the World, it would be interesting when it comes to court. And I think a lot of people will be very interested to know the reasons that made her decide to do what she did. Of course money comes into it, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, because I know that many people are after that story, and she really didn't want to betray.
No, absolutely right. A lot of people approached her and were trying. In the end, events, which I'm not allowed to talk about, led her to make that decision. As to how a court views that remains to be seen. But talking generally now, in terms of signing a confidentiality, that's an important document. But it depends on how you're being treated. And I'm talking generally, not about the Beckhams at all. But if a star, for example, is violent, if a star is doing things which the nanny, the servant, whatever, finds totally repulsive, repugnant, unacceptable, if they, the stars, are getting the servant, the person working for them in their employ, to do all kinds of things which they shouldn't, they're breaking the contract. So, and I'm talking purely in general terms, as I keep saying. So there's always two sides. Yes, she broke her confidentiality agreement that she'd signed. Was she justified? Well, let's hear what she has to say about it. At the moment, no one knows how she can, or what she thinks justified her doing what she did. You'd have to listen to that, and then you make up your own mind. Obviously, the courts will make up their own mind, but so will the public.
Where do you think Victoria went wrong? Because I mean, I still can't believe that how she went from being the Golden Girl, Spice Girl to, and how manufactured.
I don't think. I think that with David and Victoria, they desperately needed someone around them that would explain to them the wider ramifications of their success. They needed someone that they would respect and listen to, that would be prepared to tell them maybe not what they wanted to hear, but the realities of things. And I think that, from my professional viewpoint, has been something which has been increasingly missing. I think that a lot of the problems that have been, a lot of the problems that have arisen, particularly over the last year, 18 months, could have been easily avoided if someone who understood the media game even could have sat down and say, look, if you do this, this will happen. If you're not prepared, this is going to happen. You're coming across in this way, stop it, think, whatever. In my view, that hasn't happened. I believe that possibly one of the big mistakes they made was to get rid of a guy called Alan Edwards. Alan is a PR who I don't know very well, but in my view did a very good job for them. And don't forget, the biggest part of PR when you're dealing with big stars is not promotion, it's protection. And a big part of protection is anticipating potential problems before they become problems and before the media are aware, whether it's an artist or a star's ego or activities or whatever. Alan did a very good job. He's not been around, I'm guessing, for a couple of years, if you think back to when everything started to go wrong. So, maybe I would say this, but I know the kind of role I've played in careers from some of the biggest stars in the world for 40 years. And because I knew my game and I knew the dangers, I was able to avert things which could have destroyed their careers. Possibly that's got something to do with it. But whatever, things have changed a lot in the last year or two in terms of the public perception of the Beckhams. And it will be interesting to see in the next year where they go.
Yeah, I just feel that she just came over as fake to everyone, and so if you think someone's fake, you don't have any, you can't identify with them.
No, I think that David had the perfect image until he opened his mouth, and then it all goes, unfortunately. But poor soul, short of giving him a voice transplant, there's not a lot you can do. But I do think that you get the impression that they start to believe their own publicity. I don't know them, and I can only give a professional opinion from a distance. But having worked with enough stars in the last 40 odd years, it's very difficult to contain an ego, particularly if you're surrounded by people that suck up to it rather than trying to keep it in position and keep it down. Stars, and again I'm talking generally, tend to be totally in love with themselves, legend in their own minds, and again, need an awful lot of very sound, strong advice. You've only got to look at the royal family to see how easy it is to make a total balls up of just about everything. They are consistent, but again, you get the impression that they're surrounded by sycophants that tell them what they want to hear all the time. Well, that's not what it's about. It's about taking to someone on one side and say, look, if you do this, you're going to make a total fool of yourself. If you do this, you're going to destroy this. If you say that, you make yourself look shallow, stupid, take a pace back, think, whatever. Whether that's the case of the Beckhams, who knows? But I know that it happens very easily with stars, because it's so easy for them to get carried away with their own self-importance. And as we're already aware, and we'll be even more aware, I believe, in the next year, the Beckhams are not quite what they possibly believe themselves they are.
Just finally, how much is there left in this story? How much do you think it is?
You see, I can't answer that question because there's loads more. But you mustn't say that. Who knows is my proper answer now. Who knows what's left in the story? My instinct is that this won't be going away, and that possibly the Beckhams will be facing up to more, what can we say, more attacks from the media based on information that comes out. I better say that again, that wasn't very clever. What is there to come? It remains to be seen, but I don't think this is something that is going to go away. And I think it's going to be more and more difficult for David and Victoria to convince the British public that they have a very normal, harmonious marriage.